Shalom. Peace be with you. Today we're doing Parsha VaYishlach. And before we start, as I mentioned last time, we're going to really start with a meditation to get a better feeling. We're going to just meditate for 5 minutes here as we unfold. Just playing with the light to get it set for a second. There we go. So we will start with the meditation, Yod in breath, Hey on the out breath, Wah on the in breath, Hey on the out breath. Yod from the base up to the heart, Hey out through the heart. Wah from the base up to the third eye and Hey out to the heart. Let me just see something here. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We'll go about 7 minutes, and that will kind of prepare us. So we're going to do what we call in the Torah tradition, Hani Hashmika Meshefa, the initiation of the spiritual energy, which we call the Ruach HaKodesh. And so to do that, just simply look through my eyes. The cosmic energy is coming through. It's nothing I'm doing. The cosmic energy is doing this. But as it's taught by the Baal Shem Tov, a piece of my soul goes into you. We burn what we call karma, medad, keneged medad, measure for measure. And we're awakening the Ruach HaKodesh. So that's what's going on, and that's how we're going to start. And here we go. Yod. And now we enter into meditation for about 7 minutes. Yo. Slowly come out of meditation. VaYishlach is a foundational Parsha for the whole spiritual path, for the creation of Israel. And it starts with Yaakov sending out scouts, VaYishlach, to send out to see if Esau's around, because he's entering his territory, roughly speaking. And the scouts come back somewhat terrified and said, oh, well, he's not just around, he's on his way with 400 warriors. And this is very concerning Yaakov, because he really doesn't have a camp of warriors. Well, spiritual warriors he has. So he divides the camp into two and kind of goes back across the Yabak River. And so let's talk about dividing the camp in two, because everything is symbolic, okay? Everything is symbolic here. So dividing the camp in two, one of the classic ways the camp is split in two of Israel is some have the mission of Rahel to bring the teachings of God to the world. That's the mission also of Abraham and Yitzhak. Personally, it's my mission too, as the predominant energy, Galia it's called, to bring the Word of God to the world. The teachings of God on all the levels to the world. The other camp is the camp of Leah, Amotakasia, which is to have the internal, intense study of the Torah and all the good that comes from that. Two camps. And we have different ways of being in those two camps, but we have those two camps, and that is a fundamental division. Now, I don't want to say separation, because that's not really true. That it's all one, but there's focus, and the energy of Rachel and Yosef and Yaakov really is to bring the energy to the world. Energy of Leah and Levite and really all the other brothers is to go internal. Now, that's one major division. But he's also looking, in a sense, at division in his life. What is he going to do? What is going to happen? So once everything's in place, he crosses back over the Yabak River. It's kind of an interesting play, because Yabak River, very closely, just one aleph, one letter makes them separate. And this is the crossing of the river of his life. And he feels alone. Well, that's where his consciousness is at that point, because the truth is we're never alone. There's always God. But he feels alone. And it says a man comes and wrestles with him. Is this a man? Is this an angel? What is this? But he wrestles throughout the night with him and prevails. Yaakov prevails. But before he prevails, what we think is angel Samael touches him on his left hip, which is where we say negativity is stored, and he's hobbled, but he still wins. And it's a very important symbolism, which we need to get into. It isn't just creating the darkness, because everybody has that darkness to some extent within themselves. It isn't just the fact that when we struggle with darkness, we often get slimed. You don't get away free from that, but that's part of it. It is good to know that when Yaakov reached Shechem, the injury of the hip was healed. The hip represents something else, which is very important in today's world. Going back to the time of Rabbi Nachman, he also recognized it, and that's the power of joy and to dance. So it said he put his palm on his hip. So what does that mean? Palm on hip. What does that mean? So the palm is the idea of clapping in joy, and the hip is the ability to dance. And that has been the message, is no matter what is happening in your life, dance and clap for joy. Dance and clap for joy. This is partly why I love the dance so much, okay? It's a very profound teaching that, as they say, Rabbi Nachman emphasized, but it's available to us. Now, let's go to today's world. What is going on with lockdowns and the whole scientifically illegitimate position of lockdowns, distancing, wearing masks, none of it which could be validated in any kind of scientific way. As many of you know, I've written a paper to show that the mask wearing and all the research, even by the CDC, doesn't make any difference. Lockdowns don't make any difference. The research is clearly there in different countries comparing them. The outcome is the same. What's going on? This is the angel Samael touching his hip to minimize his ability to dance. So you wear a mask and you can't go out, and you can't celebrate. It's taking away your ability to be in joy, to be in celebration, to clap and joy and celebrate. It's like trying to keep people from even coming together to connect, even to pray. This is no accident. And so we have a model of that right from the very beginning. The angel Samael affecting Yaakov and his left hip. Now let's take it a little further, because this is the good news. What I consider the good news is Yaakov defeats him. That's good news. But more than that, Yaakov is transformed, but the dark force, Samael, is transformed by the light of Yaakov. And this is a way to see the bigger struggle of what's going on. It's not about defeating. How do we transform the forces of darkness back into the light? How do we do this? All comes from God. How do we do this? This is the challenge of the people of the light, is not to go into polarity, not to think about good and bad in that per se. How do we transform the darkness into the light? As Samael gets changed to either El or Sa'el. Sa'el is a positive force. The numerology of Sa'el is 91, which is 26, the tetragrammaton. Okay, 26 is the tetragrammaton, 65 is Adonai. That's not bad. So he's transformed. And he thanks Yaakov because now he can pray and celebrate God. So that's part of our role in this whole picture. It's not just seeing the globalists as the bad guys. It's like our job is to help transform their consciousness back into the light, seeing a bigger picture of what they and we can be as human beings. So that's a pretty profound teaching right there. And then the angel's about to leave, and Yaakov says, wait, I just struggled all night with you. You can't just get up and leave. I'd like a blessing here. So he blesses his name with from Yaakov to Israel, which means the struggle with God, which is the process we all do all the time. the struggle with the light and dark within us, which clearly the symbolism of the struggle, we can say he struggled with the angel, that's an outer thing. He struggles with his inner self, between the light and dark within himself, but also his inner self. What is his purpose in life? What's his mission? What is he doing? And his time with Laban, fighting against the dark side, he somewhat lost that sense. So he reconnects with his purpose. And more than that, overcomes his doubts about his mission, that he can do it, that he can succeed in this mission. So that's very beautiful. So this is part of the struggle that everybody has, the struggle of light and dark within ourselves, the struggle, can we really know our mission and do it, to be, that our will becomes God's will? These are very important questions for all of humanity. The biggest, perhaps, is the struggle of light and dark. And then he sends the angel away, because he's got the blessing, and he's empowered to know his deep name, the truth of who he is, and he has now overcome the forces of darkness within himself, and he knows his mission. He's in that alignment. So that's where profoundly important, this struggle, and it's everyone's struggle. It's the archetypical struggle. So now he's ready to meet his brother Esau, and the struggle he also had, this is a more metaphysical, is he's struggling with Esau's angel. If he defeats Esau's angel, he defeats Esau. So it's a spiritual battle. The struggle must be on that spiritual plane, which he's won. Esau comes with his 400 men, and Esau has been transformed, and they hug, and Esau kisses him, and Jacob kisses him, and they have unity, at least for a while. And they give the blessings. Now, before he meets Esau, he sends waves of gifts to him, of animals, of sheep and goats and slaves, and just all kinds of things he sends to him as gifts. One of the principles there is it's very important to placate the dark side, and that's why we have the offerings in the temple. We're about placating the dark side. It's a general principle, really, wherever I've studied, whatever the tradition, you want to placate the dark side, they get their fill, then they'll leave you alone. So he does that. That's part of why they're able to be at peace. Esau says, you know, I have a whole lot, and Jacob says, I have everything. One is when you're filled with non-causal love, non-causal joy, you have everything. Okay, non-causal peace. And Esau has a lot of what he's gathered, but he can always take more because he's still in need. So that's the other part of the story of that interaction. And then finally, Esau is so turned on by the experience of the light within himself. He says, well, come on, let's be allies. Come on with me. Come back. And Jacob is wise enough to know, touch, don't blend. And he said, no, this is all very good. And he gives a very politically correct excuse. I mean, we're with children, we're with animals, and we're going to slow you down. But he's really saying, no, this is touch, don't blend. I don't want to get too involved. It's enough we come to peace. Now, we see in history where the Hasmoneans invited the Romans in. The Hasmoneans were part of Israel later on, without being too historical, and the result of inviting them in was not touch, but they blended, is the Romans took over and they destroyed the temple. So that's the downside of blending versus just touching. So we have another very important principle. Don't get too involved with the dark side. You got to interact, touch, don't blend. Watch who your friends are. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Are they supporting your spiritual unfoldment? Are they actively living in a way that supports a whole way of life? Those are important questions. Touch, don't blend. Now, Jakob clears, and they go on from this very profound meeting, transformation, archetypical struggle that everyone on the spiritual path necessarily needs to go on, the challenging, the struggle of the light and dark within ourselves, part of the whole story. It all comes from God, but we are given this so we can evolve spiritually. We are given these challenges of the darkness within us so we can grow spiritually. We're given the challenges of outer choices and relationships so we can grow spiritually. This is all what this is about. So it's the way of spiritual unfoldment at least in the Western tradition. Okay. Now he goes on to Shechem, and some difficulties there, which we'll kind of skip over for a moment, because what is important here is where he goes after that, which is to Bethel, reaffirms his oath, commitment, and God speaks to him, and again explains those who bless you will be blessed, those who curse you will be cursed. This land is your land, make no mistake, this is your land, and you will be fruitful and multiply. I'm paraphrasing, but he gets the blessing. He gets the blessing with many people who have gone through transformation, the whole crowd who comes there with them. They purify to be able to be part of this. Then he travels further, and he gets there too late for his mother who dies, Rivka, but he meets with his father Yitzhak, who's 180 years old, and there's a whole blessing, and he and Esau, even though Yitzhak is alive, Yitzhak soon dies, and they bury him together. And this is a very important part of this whole story. In the end of the story, Jacob and Esau are unified again. In the end of the story is the burial of Abraham. We have Yitzhak and Ishmael burying him together, becoming again unified. So as we look at where this is all going, and when we enter this age, which I believe we're beginning to enter, of the end of times, there will be unity. And that's another reason why we don't want to polarize with the dark side, but understand creating enough light to transform the darkness. So this message of this Parsha is very profound. The spiritual journey, the crossing of the river, just like Abraham crossed the river, and making choices. Jacob crosses the river, faces his spiritual struggles, is transformed by them, is able to create unity with the light and dark within himself, and overcome that darkness and transform that darkness, as well as transform the darkness outside, and then becomes a light ultimately to the nations. This is the spiritual path. This is the ultimate purpose of why we're here on the planet, which is part of Jacob's struggle, but part of everyone's struggle. Why are we here? Are we here just to grow materially, or are we here to wake up spiritually, return to our oneness. That's really the question, and the answer from my point of view is we're here for Divikut Herut, God merging, and enlightenment, to be one with God again. So may everyone be blessed that we choose this path consciously, and with love and with joy, to truly know who we are as a spark of the divine, and may we blossom into full God awareness as we choose to embark on this journey. Peace be with you. Shalom, shalom, shalom.